in the Northwest.
Thank you very much indeed, Gemma, and thank you all for joining today's webinar. I hope you find it useful and that it's relevant to what you're involved in and to your businesses. But the chat function is there for you to ask any questions or seek any clarifications. Now, I have worked in marketing for many years, but I will try my hardest not to get into too much jargon. So I will try and be as clear as I can, but there may be the odd lapse, so forgive me if that happens. Okay, first of all, quick bit of detail on CECA. I'm sure you know all about this, that we were initially established as a federation in 1919 with over 300 member companies who employ 250,000 people, and that 80% of UK infrastructure works is carried out by CECA members. So it's a substantial organisation with a huge amount of influence with government and local politicians too. That shows the structure of CECA, the various regions and devolved nations. As you probably know, each region devolved nation is a separate limited company, and that gives us a lot of freedom to be able to do things that reflect the needs of our members in those particular areas. I won't dwell on this. I'm sure you know most of it already. So who am I and what do I know? Well, I was director of CECA in the Northwest from 2012 to 2021. And I'm currently the chair of CECA's Marcoms group. That focuses on marketing and communications for the organisation across all the regions and devolved nations. Since the summer of 21, I've stepped back from being director, and I now focus on providing bidding, marketing and public affairs support for members. In a past life, back in the 90s, I was managing director of a PR and public affairs agency called Lawson Lear. You don't need to know about all this because it's on my LinkedIn profile if you want to see it there. And I'm also a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing and have been for just over 20 years. So that's me. Let's get on with it. What are we going to cover today? 4 things really: brands, and this is about making sure that you know the best way to communicate your brand effectively. And it depends on 3 things really: research into your own business, research into your client's business, and this sounds a bit sneaky, research into what your competitors' brands are like as well. It's also about understanding how to define your brand's values, and we'll come on to talk about brand values in a bit, in a few more slides' time. But the brand values are absolutely critical, and I'll talk about values a lot today. And then working out the best way to stand out from the crowd. There's no point having a brand that's the same as somebody else's. I'll explain this as we go along. The second thing we'll cover will be marketing and communications techniques, and focusing on those that are most relevant for civil engineering, some do's and don'ts and some tricks of the trade, and how you can tell if marketing is working. We often forget to talk about that. We talk about the techniques, but not whether they're successful or not. So, marketing or communications? Well, they're not quite the same thing. Just to give some quick definitions here, so some clarity as to which one's which. Marketing is primarily aimed at clients and customers to promote or raise awareness of your products or the services that you offer them. Internal communications, obvious really, stating the obvious, it's directed at colleagues, while external communications uses procedures like customer relationship management, CRM, to maintain those relationships, as well as with stakeholders, partner organizations, and other clients and customers. So they use most of the same techniques to get the message across, but the difference between marketing and communications is really the range of target markets and audiences that they're aimed at. Sometimes internal, sometimes clients, sometimes stakeholders. It all depends. And hopefully that will become clear as we go along. Another area of some confusion is whether marketing, sales, or business development are actually the same thing. There's a lot of confusion about this, and people seem to use them interchangeably at times. Marketing's about creating the environment to make sales happen. It's not about getting a sale over the line as such. It's making that situation possible where a sale can take place. Business development, though, is much more vague. And there's a spectrum really between marketing at the one extreme and sales at the other. I would suggest that in civil engineering, it's more about working out how to help your firm win more business, developing the relationships with clients, third parties, the people who can assist you in a bid, a tender, and making sure that it's successful. That's probably how I would see it in civil engineering, although others may disagree. So does marketing work for civil engineering? Yes, it does. But some types are more relevant than others, as we shall see. Let's start with brands. Brands are critically important. A brand, well, let's see what a brand is. It's a name or a symbol that helps people identify a particular company, product, or individual. Some brands are instantly recognizable. Think of McDonald's and its golden arches. They're everywhere. Everybody knows what they stand for. And a brand is really it features one firm's goods or services to separate them from a competitor's. McDonald's doesn't look like Burger King. They don't look like KFC. They all look quite distinctive and different, which is important because differentiation is something I'm going to go on a bit about today. Now, brands are intangible, which means you can't actually see or touch them. Well, you can sort of see them. You can see a logo and you can read the words, but that's not everything. There's an awful lot more to it than that. It's about the values, the reputation of that organization. And those are the things that you can't see, but they're all wrapped up in what is the brand. And put it all together, a brand will shape people's perception of a business, their products, or the individuals who work for them. So brands are the best place to start, and they're critical to everybody's business, even individuals. Now, I've picked a couple of unusual ones here. I mean, when we think of brands, typically we think about companies that make products. So people like Ford cars, Coca-Cola, fizzy drinks, and McDonald's again, burgers. So it's a very clear understanding. They make this product. This is the brand. We understand what it is. But I've deliberately picked two brands here that act a little bit differently. And it's kind of important to understand why. These are two of the world's biggest companies, Unilever and Procter & Gamble. And if you look at the two little logos on the top right, I'd be surprised if any of you felt they were as prominent or well-known, well-recognized as McDonald's or Ford or Coca-Cola or anybody like that. And why is that? They're such big companies. They make such a huge range of products. So why aren't they as well-known? Well, I'll come back to the question in a moment, but there's another question. There's a mission statement, the bit in the middle, the italics. It's by Unilever, and this is their mission statement. We meet everyday needs for nutrition, hygiene, and personal care with brands that help people feel good, look good, and get more out of life. Isn't clear to me whether that's Unilever or Procter & Gamble. It is Unilever, but it doesn't have anything that differentiates it from its biggest competitor. Now, that's strange as well. Why would that be? Now then, if you look at that little bunch of products at the bottom, it's not a great slide, I'm afraid. It's quite tiny. But there's lots of different products. Fairy Liquid, Ariel, Gillette, Flash. They're all products that are made by Procter & Gamble. And yet, if you picked up any of those off the shelf, all you'd see of Procter & Gamble is a tiny, tiny logo. It's almost invisible. Blink and you'd miss it. So why is it? Well, the reason is they are such diverse companies. They have so many brands that they sell, so many products. And both Unilever and Procter & Gamble acquire brands. Both companies have literally hundreds of brands that they have within their organizations. So for them, it's all about the product. Quite different from McDonald's, who just do burgers and fries and milkshakes, all kind of related products, not diverse at all. Ford, they just make cars. Coca-Cola just make fizzy drinks. So quite different, but it's worth understanding whether it's the product or the business where the brand really matters. Everybody's got a brand. Even CECA's got a brand. We have a logo here on the top right and a little strapline, working for infrastructure. It was designed about 12 years ago, maybe a little longer. And each of those colored segments in the corner above the A represents a different aspect of what civil engineering is about: water, rail, roads, communications, and waste. I probably missed one, but I think that's what they are. And your brands will tend to be about your company. They won't typically be about individual products. So you're quite different from Unilever and Procter & Gamble. Your company's brands speak about what your company is about, your values, what you do, what you specialize in. And brands matter because they give an audience, your clients, your customers, your stakeholders, they give them an idea of what your business and its values are all about. And the way your audience perceives a brand is directly linked to the kind of reputation that you have. And I'll come on to reputation in a minute because this is vital. And again, I'll talk about differentiating a lot, I'm afraid, but you've got to separate yourself from the competition. You've got to look different. Not always easy, but there are ways of doing it. So you can get it wrong. And I'm going to show you a few horror stories. Brands are really important. You need to give a lot of thought to what they are. You can't just pull one off the shelf or do something with a bit of click art. Their creation needs careful thought. Even the colors can be significant. For instance, in Liverpool, you'd be very, very careful using red or blue, the two football teams. Orange or green, relating to Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland. There are real sensitivities in particular locations about what colors you use. And also, when you put a strap line, those few words that go beneath the logo, be very careful. Don't just use platitudes or meaningless statements. Does simply the best really say anything about your business? If everybody in your sector says simply the best, well, nobody's the best. So instead, focus on what's relevant to you and your audience and your unique selling points, USPs, the things that make you special and different. So brands need to be handled with care because a bad brand can cause reputational damage and it'll ruin your relationship with clients. And it's far easier to take care of your brand than try and resurrect it once damage has been caused. But even the most well-loved brands can suffer setbacks and sometimes with catastrophic consequence. So let's have a look at a few. It's a bit of fun anyway. Cadbury's. Everybody knows Cadbury's. Everybody loves Cadbury's chocolate. And they developed a great reputation in the early part of the 20th century. George Cadbury, he built a village called Bourneville at his own expense. And it was a model village for his workers and their families. And it's to alleviate the evils of cramped living conditions, as he said. Well, it provided a wonderful service for the people who worked for him. And they justifiably developed an excellent reputation as a company that people would want to buy products from. Then in 1905, the Cadbury's Dairy Milk was born, and it was a higher quality chocolate bar than anyone had ever had before. So they've got a great reputation. But there was a setback. First of all, when the United Kingdom joined the European Union in 73, or the EEC, I think as it was called then, European countries said that dairy milk wasn't actually chocolate at all because it had a lower cocoa content. So it was banned in the EU until Cadbury's agreed not to call it chocolate. Now, if you just skip back, you can see the wrapper there for dairy milk doesn't say chocolate on it anywhere, and it can't. Might change after Brexit, you never know. The second setback, in 2010, Kraft became the major shareholder of the business, and they made hundreds and hundreds of people redundant, and that led to widespread public disapproval. People suddenly thought, they're not the same nice people making that nice chocolate or whatever they could call it. There's something else now. So they lost a lot of popularity. But here's a big one. This is where they are now, and they're currently embroiled in fresh allegations of using child labor. Campaigners are saying that farmers in Ghana harvesting cocoa pods are paid less than £2 a day, and they can't afford to hire adult workers. Wow, that's a big one. And that really is going to dent their reputation. Will they bounce back? Well, we'll see. Next one, Brewdog. People may have drunk their stuff. They claim to be the #1 craft brewer in Europe since they were formed in 2007. And over the last 10, 15 years, they've won a whole hatful of awards. But some setbacks. 2019, they were accused of stealing marketing concepts from a PR company. That's not very clever. Then in 2021, 100 former employees published an open letter saying that the company had a culture of fear. That's pretty awful too. But probably the worst of the lot is right now, and the chief executive, James Watt, has been accused of inappropriate behavior and abuse of power in the workplace by former staff. This really is putting people off. A lot of the people who would like Brewdog's products wanted to buy products from a company they considered ethical. Suddenly, Brewdog is not looking like an ethical company at all, and that is having an impact on their reputation. Now, Brewdog and Cadbury's may recover, but it's not going to be easy for them. Now, here's another thing. With the Ukraine invasion at the moment, Netflix and IKEA stopped trading in Russia immediately that happened, or very soon afterwards. McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Pepsi were very slow to follow suit. Now, will that affect their reputations, I wonder? Or are they just so popular that it'll have no effect? But what if there's something else? Supposing it was a food hygiene issue. For something like McDonald's or Pepsi, that could be critical. Now, you see the P&O logo. It was just weeks ago that P&O, the chief executive at P&O, sacked 800 people without any notice. Again, how will P&O survive? Are they so popular that they'll ride the storm, or will they never recover? Only time will tell. But it just underlines the point that protecting your brand and making sure that your reputation remains intact is vital. It's easier to do that than try and recover afterwards. Now, some more horror stories. I'll get through these fairly quickly. Some of you may remember a guy called Gerald Ratner. Back in the 90s, Ratner's had over 1,000 jewelry shops. They were in every high street. And in 1991, when Gerald Ratner was asked why he could sell things so cheaply, he said, because it's total crap. His words, not mine. And he then went on to say about the earrings that they sold, that they were cheaper than a prawn sandwich from Marks and Spencer, but the sandwich would probably last longer than the earrings. What was he thinking of? Anyway, the value of Ratner's plummeted by £500 million, and Gerald Ratner was subsequently sacked from the company he founded. Next one. Following the Hillsborough disaster, The Sun published a story under the headline, The Truth, claiming that Liverpool fans stole from the dead and dying, tried to prevent paramedics from helping victims, and assaulted a police officer while he was performing CPR. For obvious reasons, The Sun is virtually invisible throughout Merseyside. Whether you're a Liverpool or an Everton fan, you just don't see it there. So their market in Merseyside has vanished. Just one more. Hillary Clinton. Yes, even individuals have brands. You need a brand if you're going to stand for president. And in 2016, she described Trump supporters as deplorable. Well, that was the daftest thing you could do. Any idea of getting Republicans or swing voters to go to her to join the Democrats just vanished. Her campaign was dead in the water straight away. So here are some of the most popular brands across Europe. Again, not a great slide, I'm afraid, but you can see that pale blue area to the right of Europe, to the east of Europe, that's Ukraine. And their most popular brand is Apple. And actually, that's no surprise. Ukraine is an IT hotspot. It has a huge reputation for IT expertise, so it's perhaps no surprise that Apple would be popular there. In Britain, it's green, and that's the BBC. Well, no surprise there, perhaps. And the purple one right in the middle, Germany. Again, no surprises that it's Mercedes-Benz. But if you look at Scandinavia, this is where I think it's interesting. The blue bit in the middle is Sweden, and on either side, you've got Norway and Finland, who are both orange. So Sweden goes for Nike, but Norway and Finland go for Adidas. That's strange. Wonder why. It all comes back to brand values. The BBC prides itself on its impartiality. That's why we love it. Apple likes to be seen as the most innovative of the tech companies. Again, that's why they are so popular, particularly in a country like Ukraine with a reputation for IT expertise. But how do we distinguish between the values of Nike and Adidas? They both make trainers. Well, the people in Sweden and Finland seem to. Maybe it's because Nike does more marketing in Sweden than in Finland. Don't know. It's certainly worth understanding why brands have greater popularity with one country or even a demographic group. You could have done that last slide. Back to it. You could have done it by age group or socioeconomic group. It doesn't have to just be by country. Different types of groups have different criteria for what they would consider popular. The point is, effective marketing first requires the company to be clear about its brand values. Does it want to be known for quality, price, sustainability, for a particular demographic group or country even, or what? And how does the organization ensure its brand values stand out from those of its competitors? And does it work in civils? Yes. But here's the tricky thing. All civil engineering contractors' brand values have to be seen as safe, cost-effective, innovative, reliable, and more besides. So the task of standing out isn't easy at all. That's really difficult. So what do? Analyzing your competitors' brand values and how they market themselves. It sounds sneaky, but you've got to do it. Researching into your target audience. What are they looking for? They're going to want a lot more than you saying simply the best or something like that. And if you're working in Liverpool and your logo's blue or red, might be worth knowing if your client's a Liverpool or an Everton fan. Not that you would change it, but you could pretty much gauge the reaction that would be if you've got a red logo and you send it to an Everton supporter in Liverpool. So once you've understood your competitors' brand values, what your target audience, your clients are looking for, what's important to them, they're the first steps in developing a brand that will differentiate you. And then you look at the most relevant and effective techniques to communicate your brand values with different types of audience, different segments, and they won't all be the same. For example, what you would communicate with to a local authority client might be quite different from what you'd send to a private developer. You need to understand, you need to look into the client and their aspirations and the stuff that matters to them. There's plenty of resources that can help. Pardon me. Philip Kotler's Marketing Management is the classic text on the subject. Also, the Chartered Institute of Marketing has its construction industry group. There's a link there to its website, and they've got lots of useful stuff that you can pick up. It tends to be pretty build related rather than civils, but there's still stuff you might find useful. Now, social media and digital marketing, that's going to be covered by a workshop in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm not going to go through it in detail in any way. But many of the techniques and ways of using social media and digital marketing use the same principles as traditional print broadcast and the more mainstream types of marketing that we're all familiar with. And I suppose the four pillars that make up marketing are advertising, public relations, direct marketing, and promotions. They're the big four, and they can work just as well in digital marketing as they can in traditional techniques. So 4 very quick definitions. Advertising is paying for space or airtime in the media, and it guarantees it. You want to put an advert, something that promotes your company or the services you offer. You can guarantee it will appear and say exactly what you want. That's good. Public relations is about persuading the media to use material that's about your organization. There's no charge, but there's no guarantee that what appears will be what you've sent, and you have no control over what finally appears in the media. It's great because it's free, but the downside is you're not sure what you're going to end up with, if anything at all, in many cases. Direct marketing, that's about sending stuff to your clients or your target audience. And promotions, that's about increasing greater take-up of a product or service. That's things like discounts, offers, special offers, stuff like that. There's 4 bigger definitions here, and I'm not going to dwell on these. You can read them at your leisure. But it's basically underlining the sort of explanation I've just given. So what do you do? And this sounds a bit facetious, but what do? Do you squander the budget on advertising or fritter it away on PR? You see, to many people, marketing is seen as not having much accountability. You know you've got to do it, but you're not actually sure what it achieves for you. We generally know how to do it, but how do you get the most from your marketing budget? Once you've decided that you're going to allocate some of your turnover towards marketing, how much, and how do you make sure that it works? The trouble is, if companies didn't spend money on marketing and communications, we wouldn't know what they're offering us. So you have to do it, but as Lord Leverhulme says in this quote here, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which half. I said that a good few years ago, and it still holds true. Lord Leverhulme was the great industrialist who created what is now Unilever, and they're the company whose brands range from Persil to Pot Noodle. As I mentioned in the slide much earlier on, they are a huge business who've acquired lots and lots of different brands. And he was one of the first people to understand the value of marketing to sell the company's products. But he couldn't be certain just how effective it was being. Knew he had to do it, didn't know if it was working. So can you do better? I think I've said research about half a dozen times already. I'll probably say it another dozen times as we go along. Research. Where you want the business to get to and what potential clients want from you. And if you do use an advertising agency, like some of you probably do, they need to really understand you and your target market. Never, ever give an advertising agency a free rein, or they will just waste money. And we'll come on to that in a minute. It isn't easy to look different from the competition, but at least you should focus on getting across your particular skills and expertise, and most importantly, how they can benefit the client. It's also important to choose the right media for what you want to get across. Here are 3 of the best known national titles in the industry. But what do you want it to do? Whether it's traditional, print, broadcast, or digital, what do you want that medium to achieve for your business? So, for instance, is it better to have a full page in construction news or 4 quarter pages spread over a couple of months? If it is about frequency or it's about scale, and it all depends on what you want to get across. Probably haven't got time to go through that in detail to do today, but it's something I'd be more than happy to talk to any of you about outside the meeting. Right, 2 commercials, and just a technical note here. An advertisement that appears in the press is called an ad, and something that appears on TV or radio is called commercial. Just a bit of technical background there. 2 commercials for the Fiat Tempra and the Lada Samara. Neither car is made anymore, thank goodness. And nobody makes commercials like that anymore. Again, thank goodness. So the Fiat commercial had beautiful music, an atmospheric setting, and a glamorous couple. The Lada commercial had two northern comics, Cannon and Bull. So don't think about this too long. Have a look at these two and tell me which one you think works best. And then we'll have a quick poll afterwards.
Designed for life.
I'm here to tell you about risky motoring.
Me too, Tommy, me too. This is risky. This is risky. Make them have it, Tommy, lad.
Some people risk buying a used car when they could quite easily afford a brand new Lada. You can drive away any new Lada for only £99 deposit. Typical APR, 19.5. Did you know that, Bobby?
No, I didn't. No.
Well, you do now.
Yes.
Or only £99 a month. And you know what else, Bobby?
What's that, Tommy?
You're covered.
What, you know?
Yes, you are. Your payments are covered against accidents, sickness, redundancy, and you even get free life insurance. And no need to risk third-party insurance either. You get 1 year's fully comprehensive insurance for only £99. And they're guaranteed for 2 years or 50,000 miles. So there you have it. Nothing can go wrong. Can it, Bobby?
Don't expose yourself to unnecessary risks. Buy a brand new Lada and make sure you're covered.
You've ruined it, haven't you? I thought you said risky, Tommy. I thought you said risky.
We'll just give this a moment while you have a chance to vote on which of those two dreadful commercials you think work best. Okay. Now, what were the results, I wonder?
Can you see the results, Guy?
I can see 54% have voted, but I haven't got the results.
The results are below, so it's a kind of 50-50 split on videos 1 and 2.
Right. Let's go back to the presentation. Thanks, Jem. Well, that's interesting. 50-50 split. I'm not totally surprised, but here's the background. The Fiat commercial was a disaster. It ruined the agency that made it. It was a big name company, whereas the Lada won loads and loads of awards and sold lots of cars. And here's why. It's because the Fiat commercial said nothing about the car, not even how much it cost. Designed for life. What does that even mean? But Cannonball went round the Lada, pointed out what you were getting for your money, how much it cost, and all of the various offers that came with it. It was a cheesy commercial, certainly wasn't attractive, but it was very, very successful. So thank you for voting. We'll carry on now and move on a little bit. So does advertising work for civil engineering contractors? Kind of. The point from the Fiat commercial is don't get taken in by appearances. Glossy advertising isn't always the answer. It can actually be quite basic, quite nuts and bolts to get your message across. So it doesn't always have to look as glamorous as that Fiat commercial. Yes, advertising's always been better at marketing goods and products rather than services. So why would a civil engineering contractor advertise? Well, to quote Vicky Pollard, yes, but no, but. Don't just do it because everybody else does it. Advertising can be useful in certain circumstances. It's great for keeping your company's name in front of clients and potential clients. It's important. You don't want them to forget you. Beyond that, though, its effectiveness is fairly limited. So it's really about maintaining awareness and probably not a whole lot more than that. Direct marketing. Well, this again, research your target market before you even start doing it. It can be an expensive waste of money if you don't. Just think, though, what do you do with all the gifts and giveaways you receive? If you don't use them, see them prominently on your desk or on the wall, then the ones that you send out probably don't have much impact either, unless they're truly, truly innovative. And anyway, not all clients are allowed to receive gifts these days. Would you really be able to send a bottle of branded champagne to a local authority client? No chance. They wouldn't be able to accept it. So they have to be relevant. Being innovative helps them stand out, but you've got to be careful. And a quick horror story here. I used to work for a part of Greater Manchester Council, and a print company was 70 years old and sent us a box with a card in it saying that they were 70 years old and that they shared the same birthday as the invention of the bra. So the box contained a little card saying that and a bra. Well, it landed on my old boss's desk and she was horrified. And she said to me, "We're never going to use that lot ever again." Got to be careful. You can't just mass market something, send it out to a mass audience without thinking about who's getting it. Promotions, these are the least relevant to contractors. I'll just give you a quick rundown. Buy one, get one free, bog-offs. They don't have any relevance in civil engineering because contractors don't build things for sale, typically. You can't have buy one highway, get one free. Clip the coupons from these pipelines, send them for your free gift. No, it doesn't work like that. So I think we can pretty much discount promotions as being of any use to you. Public relations, though, this is probably the area that is most relevant to contractors. It gets your message across and it allows for some complexity. After all, what you do is far more sophisticated than selling tins of beans or toilet rolls. What you do is a complex, sophisticated role. And public relations is good at getting that across. It works well with social media, and it's good at dealing with issues. Increasingly, coverage in the media, all kinds of media, print, digital, broadcast, it reflects our interest in a range of current concerns, social value, climate change, you name it. So it's relevant to a lot of things that civil engineers are already in. But as I've said before, there are no guarantees. You can send things to a journalist and there's no control over what they're going to use and how it's going to appear. And remember, any kind of waffle, spin, puff, call it what you like, is very dangerous. Journalists like cold, hard facts and the evidence to back it up. Without that, they will never use a story. In 2022, public relations has kind of evolved a bit from how it might have been even just 20 years ago. It used to be about getting a journalist to write a story about your company, and that's still generally true. But with the arrival of social media, print and broadcast have had to adapt. And the days of newspaper reporters dashing about to cover a story, they're long gone. These days, everyone is an editor, pardon me, a blogger, or even a vlogger. And with very high quality cameras in mobile phones, newspapers don't rely on press photographers anymore. So it's easier than ever to provide content for the media. And at the same time, with fewer staff employed at newspapers and at TV companies, they're more and more reliant on receiving press releases and information as they have fewer resources to research things themselves. So it's a great opportunity at the moment. But is all PR good PR? Absolutely not. The wrong message can damage a brand. And anything crass, untrue, or opportunistic is dangerous. I can't believe that Burger King sent out a tweet on International Women's Day in 2021 that read, "Women belong in the kitchen." Yes, they deleted it in the end, but what were they thinking of? And then Boris and the denials of his Downing Street parties. Just this week, that could have seen the end of a prime minister's career. Be very, very careful. All PR is not good PR. Some do's in public relations: keep your stories clear, concise, and comprehensive. Check deadlines. And if you get a chance to get to know a journalist, grab it. The closer you get to know them, the better that relationship will be, the better chance you have of placing a story with them. But remember, it's news that they want. And there might be an issue or a story that matters to you, but really, would anybody else be interested? Try it on your friends, see if they'd be interested, especially friends from outside the industry. They always used to say, try a story out with your parents or your grandparents. And if they're interested, half a chance that other people will be too. And use the right language for the media. Now, engineers are wonderful people, but they are often very, very literal. If you were writing a story about a reservoir being dewatered, that's great for the technical press. They'd understand that. If you're writing it for a local paper, they probably wouldn't even think dewatered is English. And you'd be far better off saying drained. I used to be consultant for British Waterways. It took me 3 months to persuade the engineers to use drained if we were talking to the Northwich Guardian rather than dewatered. They agreed in the end, but it took some persuasion. And it also took some persuasion with the same engineers to agree on when a project would be completed. Typically, a lot of the projects I was involved in overran on time. So when an engineer said, it'll finish in September, I'd say, well, how about if we say Christmas? And when the job's done in November, everybody's happy because it looks like the job's been completed ahead of time. It all sounds a bit sneaky, but it's really about protecting your message and making sure that your client, your organization rather, comes out in the best possible light. Some don'ts. Don't waste time asking a journalist to send you the final version of a story before it appears. They'll never do it. And don't ask them to send you a copy of an article after it's been printed. They'll just say, go and buy it. Don't bother sending them stuff that's irrelevant. Everyone's done this, sending photographs to a radio station. Never going to use it. And this is a bit difficult because it could be important to you and it might not be that easy to see what you can say that's new. But try to avoid sending in material that's already been covered extensively. If you're going to write about climate change, you've got to find a new angle or social value. Don't just say what lots and lots of other people have already been saying. And I'm sure none of us do this, but never tell lies or give out fake news. It's nearly ruined Boris. It didn't do Trump any good. So if it doesn't work for them, I simply wouldn't try it either. But PR can be useful when things go wrong. crisis management is a whole different topic, which I could do on another day if people were interested. PR can help when things go wrong. And it's a good thing if you can persuade your colleagues that this is a good idea. I think it is. Tell the media about small mistakes, and they'll be more likely to help when things go wrong, more serious things go wrong. I'm not saying you should tell the media when something catastrophic happens. That's probably a bad idea. But a small thing, an overrun, a difficulty with a particular project that's fairly minor, doesn't hurt being public about that. They'll trust you. They'll think you're holding your hands up. It's a good thing. And if the media contacts you, if they ring you up or they email you, always good to consult colleagues just to be sure that the answer you give them will be the right one, but be quick to respond. They have deadlines. They have very sharp deadlines. So you have to be quick to respond and never say no comment. I think only politicians are allowed to do that. And again, it doesn't really work for them either. A quick case study. I was working for British Waterways as a consultant when the Maghull flood happened in 1994. This is a stretch of the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, just on the edge of Merseyside. And in the middle of the night, cold, wet night in February 94, the canal, the base of the canal, the bed of the canal fractured, and water flooded down and flooded over 100 houses in Maghull. Now, the causes for this, there are three organisations who would have some responsibility here. First of all, British Waterways, because it was the water from our canal that did the flooding. Second, there was the local council, and they had given permission for hundreds of houses to be built on the offside of the canal. And the water that ran off from them went into a culvert that went beneath the canal, and the culvert simply couldn't cope with that level of water. It was the culvert that fractured, and it's the culvert that caused the canal to break. And then, of course, there was an outfit called North West Water. This is before United Utilities and the Environment Agency. They actually were responsible for looking after the culvert and maintaining it. So three separate organisations with some responsibility for the flood. I would have argued that it's probably the council who had the greatest responsibility, since they caused the flood that went, the level of water that went into the culvert that caused the canal to breach. I would also argue that North West Water had a responsibility to maintain the culvert and ensure that it was fit for purpose. But the public and the media didn't see it that way. All they saw was lots and lots of dirty canal water from a British Waterways canal flooding these poor people's houses. How did we get out of it? We were the ones in the firing line, and typically we were expected to get a kicking. So two things that we did which helped us get out of a crisis. First of all, for a good many years, we had worked with the press and been honest when things had gone wrong. So the Liverpool Echo, the Liverpool Daily Post, they were prepared to hear our side. They were prepared to give us a chance on this. So that helped. And the second thing was, within a matter of hours, we had hired a building in the village of Maghull and let the people in the community come and talk to us, actually shout at us for a good couple of hours. And we remained on that site as long as the works took place to repair the canal, with regular updates, regular meetings with local people. And that helped an awful lot. And British Waterways' reputation at the end of the works being completed, the canal being repaired, were pretty much intact. So there's an awful lot you can do to get over a crisis. But a lot of it is about managing how the media behave, developing that relationship, being honest with them, and in this case too, working with the local community. Excuse me a moment. So how do you measure PR? I think I said at the beginning, marketing is often seen as lacking accountability. Traditionally, AVE is the method of measuring public relations, and that's saying how much an item of coverage would cost if you had to buy it as an advertisement. But it doesn't work. It looks great being able to say we've got 200,000 quid's worth of advertising for free, in our public relations because, as I said, PR doesn't actually cost. You've got to persuade the journalists or the media to use your material. The trouble with AVE is it doesn't distinguish between negative and positive coverage. How about half a page in the Financial Times that says your organization is lousy? Well, you wouldn't count that as positive, would you? You wouldn't buy that as an advert. And how relevant would coverage in the Fish Trades Gazette, a fine August publication, but how relevant would that be to a civil engineering contractor? Not at all. And at least for the time being anyway, until the license fee is scrapped, you can't buy advertising space on most BBC stations. So I don't know how you go about assessing the value of any coverage you get on the BBC. Instead, there's an approach called the matrix approach, far more scientific, and I can go into this in more detail. But for now, it's just about looking at the number of key messages that you use, the relevance of the media that it appears in, and the number of people who read, see, or hear the item in question. You put a score against each of these, pardon me, you put a score against each of these, and then you can actually develop a trend as to how much your coverage is increasing or decreasing, and rank one piece of coverage against another. We haven't really got time to go through that now, but it's something I'd be very happy to take you through outside this meeting. So to sum up, think about what you want to achieve with your marketing, how much you want to spend, and what does good look like to you. And I'm sorry I've said it so many times, but research, research, research. Research your own business, where you want it to go. Research what your competitors do, how they brand themselves, how they market themselves, and research your clients, what matters to them and what's important that you can do for them that they can't. So that's me. I think we've just done it within the hour. Thank you all for listening.